Welcome to The Beat, your go-to where leaders, founders, and investors share insights on growth, innovation, and business building. I'm Chitra Nabat, your host. Joining us today is Scott Barclay, Insight Partners Managing Director. Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Chitra, thanks for having me.
Tell us about Insight Partners and what's differentiated about your firm's investing approach.
I think of Insight as one of the world's best software venture capital firms. We invest at every stage, but at heart, we think there's a team and software that can scale and expand. We love doing this in healthcare. We invest at every stage. And the thing that's probably most differentiated is the day after we write the check, we roll up our sleeves and we have a whole program around how we add value to the companies in the coming months, years, and for a longer duration. We're really long-term investors, so we build these value-added services to try to compound advantages so that our companies win.
How do you compete to attract the best founders?
I would say you just start by walking with the founder in an honest way. There's many companies, there's many investors, as some of us were talking about earlier. Venture capital firms can really be quite different. So we value trust. We value being direct with the founder of who we are and what we want to accomplish. We usually come to a meeting of the minds of what the vision for this company can be, and if we can be an unfairly good long-term partner to help that company reach its goals.
Let's talk about the investing landscape. Last year saw the lowest amount of capital invested in U.S. digital health startups in 4 years.
Yeah.
VC funding and deal volume sunk by more than 60%. VCs, including the big brand funds, have written down large portions of their portfolios. Roughly 130 health tech unicorns had their valuations plummet more than 50% over the last couple of years. What's been the experience at your firm?
I would say, starting at the end of 2021, we were pretty aggressive to explain to our founders and to founders we were working with that we thought the environment was changing. That an environment of zero interest rates combined with growth as the only kind of key metric in which other investors were investing had led valuations too high. I would say today we are in just a straightforward, healthy environment. I think this is a great time to be investing. So our experience through that starts with the portfolio of helping founders understand, here's what's happening in the markets and here's what it means for your current and future kind of capital raising strategy. But more importantly, how do you operationalize that so you're building the best strategy and the best operations, relevant and most importantly, efficient for the capital that you're using. We have never stopped investing during this whole cycle. The funding rates are lower, the statistics that you cite, because so many firms raise so much capital at a relatively high valuation that they've been both burning off that capital, but also trying to grow into those valuations. We're just starting to see the majority of our companies that we invested in healthcare during that period have kind of reached and started to really exceed those previous valuations. But my headline is, it feels like it's a really healthy time right now.
But on the valuations piece of it, how does your firm, what was the level in terms of you guys being impacted by valuation write-downs? And how do you absorb, pivot, adjust your investing strategy?
Yep. One of our leading partners likes to say, anyone who could invest in hindsight 2020 capital partners would have a great return. So we probably paid slightly too higher prices, but predominantly for companies that are really wonderful companies with really wonderful teams. So the first point is just to sit down with those teams and be honest about what's changing. Venture capitalists have, we have customers that are our limited partners, and we pretty quickly were very direct and honest with them about how we saw valuations changing. We take our valuation committee on a quarterly basis very seriously and even run a separate entity within the firm to keep all those numbers in a very transparent fashion. So my point being that by May of 2022, we had already lowered most of our internal marks. Then the focus is on what's the future we want to build, both for the companies who are then growing back into those valuations, as well as to new checks that we're deploying.
You talked about your level of investing didn't change during these last few years, despite the market environment. Right now, analysts say private equity firms have roughly $650 billion on the sidelines waiting to be deployed. Where's your firm investing? And take us into that pattern recognition that would get you to write that check.
Let me correct and be very clear about what we did and didn't do. our level of deployment, both the number of checks and how much capital we were putting into companies, definitely significantly decreased starting around second quarter of 2022. What didn't change was the process. Our rate of calling on companies, of spending time with founders, not only our own companies where we double down in our attention, but spending time with founders who we think might be onto something that's part of the long-term answer in unlocking healthcare cost and access, that process didn't change. The workflow didn't change. But the rate of deploying dollars slowed down for a while and has been steadily picking back up over the last 6 months. So with that, your next question was kind of what are we excited about today?
Yes.
You know, if we just accept that valuations are maybe pretty reasonable, we're just focused on finding really great companies. We want great founders with great technology that we know can scale. Most of the companies we invest in have software somewhere deep within their DNA. And so we have a real playbook to both assess if the software company can be special, but also all the things we can do to help tweak and improve it so they go from being a really good software startup to a scaled, sustainable, one-day public software company.
Take us into that playbook.
It really starts with the journey the company is on. And then how we kind of superimpose on top of that is we have a center of excellence organized like a software company. So as that founding team or CEO takes a company from 15 to 55 to 5,500 employees and the revenue ramp that represents, as they come upon hard problems, industry questions, we have a center of excellence that can help jump in and answer those questions. We don't run the company. We're always supporting management. It's that we always want to be on the front toe around where's the value to be created and how can we help? How can we be nimble, cash efficient, basically help these founders build wonderful companies.
Over the next 5 years, where is there real money to be made in healthcare? Because we're surrounded by shiny objects, even here at this conference.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming. Where is there real money to be made?
Well, I'll take a deep breath and just say there's a lot of breadth. $7 trillion market, $4.2 trillion in the US. We're really excited about three big themes. One is artificial intelligence and compute with software that materially improves quality, but where that company is built from the beginning with an understanding of how it either improves the science base back to life science or has the flywheel for distribution and payment with payers. And every day, our companies that have that model are scaling versus single shots that maybe were a good idea but don't have that type of reinforcing mechanisms are more struggling. The second big theme we have is almost all of life sciences needs to be rebuilt on top of data. So we have numerous software shots into the heart of pharma, life sciences, CROs, CDMOs. We have numerous investments in that space, and they're usually just great software companies solving a problem for a really large life science company. And the third is, if I think about the future of care, the future of coordinating care, almost all infrastructure upon which that rests needs to be rebuilt. So we invest in platforms, in network effects, and frankly, technology plumbing that we think builds what healthcare will look like in the year 2040.
When do you think the next exit window will open up for health tech startups? And what do you think the metrics are now required for companies to go public?
I'm going to answer you indirectly because I have no idea. We're not prognosticators on where the markets are going. We do have a long-term belief in healthy capitalistic markets to eventually bring the right companies to the fore and help them scale into global markets. What I will say is we're just focused every day on how you can build great companies that are sustainable. So what does sustainable mean? It means they're not only efficient with every dollar that they invest, it's that ultimately they're growing significantly and significantly profitable. So if we, in our preference, most of our companies will end up to be rule of 60, rule of 70 type companies over and over again, continuing to scale, continuing to reach into their market TAMs, but always with a control your own destiny use of cash so that we always can be kind of well-positioned, dynamically strong within that market.
Leadership. In life and business, there are rules, codes, norms to how things are done. Where have you been a code breaker and how did you do it?
Well, I don't know what privileges I've had, but I've had many. So I'll start with one which is very subtle, which is in the top of the funnel in venture capital. If there is a founder who's willing to give their life and attention to work on a problem, I will meet them or I will get them to the right person. You can get to me directly. You can get to our team directly. Of course, there's lots of signals. There's lots of ways that we look for startups and we look for signal of, oh, are they onto something special? Have they figured it out? But the founder I never forget is the founder who doesn't know a bunch of venture capitalists, who doesn't come out of Stanford, isn't sitting in Boston, New York, or San Francisco. We will engage with any team that's using software to try to solve a hard problem. We'll meet with them at any stage, and we'll always just give them our best. It's so simple to say, we want to engage with founders, and anytime we touch them, we want to feel like we gave them more than we took in trying to understand the future we're trying to build.
Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Titra, thanks for having me.